AM 1460, the new WXBR. You're listening to the Metro South Morning Show. Peter Zimbor here with you alongside Mike Pava on a Thursday morning. On Saturday, August 17th, from the TD Bank Garden in Boston, the UFC returns to Beantown for UFC on Fox Sports 1, and competing on that show will be an East Bridgewater native by the name of Joe Lauzon, who joins me now via the telephone. Joe, good morning.
How's it going today?
It's going excellent, Joe. You'll be fighting Michael Johnson August 17th at the TD Garden in Boston. The last time you fought at the TD Bank Garden, about 3 years ago, almost 3 years to the day of this particular show, the reception you got upon walking into the arena was absolutely gargantuan. You must have felt like a rock star.
Yeah, it was crazy. I've always heard that, people feed off the crowd and, they feel their energy and things like that. And I always, I never really agreed with it until I fought in Boston. And it was unbelievable. I couldn't hear my corners. It was awesome. You
were probably the biggest ticket seller and the biggest draw of that particular show, which was peculiar because you didn't even make the pay-per-view broadcast that night live. You were part of the prelims, which were then on Spike, and they actually aired your fight later in the night after the main event had ended on pay-per-view. The reception was just huge.
Yeah, it was awesome. I had a lot of friends and family. Usually when I fight all over the world. And, I have, like a ton of great training partners, great friends, great fans. That, come around and they come to fight me, So in a typical fight, we'll have around 100 people that will fly out for the event and get tickets to me and things like that. But fighting at home was it was crazy because, there was no flight involved, no airfare, no hotel, so it was very easy for people to kind of come along and see a great event.
I'm interested in the mechanics of how this works because on local boxing and MMA shows in the area, fighters actually sell tickets out of their cars and out of their homes and out of their gyms, then turn them into the promoters at weigh-ins and get a cut of what they sell. Did you do anything of that sort for a show of this magnitude? And if so, how many tickets did you actually sell? Because the reception was just insane.
I sold a lot of tickets. I don't know the exact number. It was a couple hundred, though. But, basically I have to go and I have to, pay for the tickets in advance. It's not like they don't give me tickets and I don't sell them. It's a case of I just kind of I took orders from people. I ordered tickets, and then I distributed them. I had to collect money and all that stuff. So it's a little bit of a pain, but I'm glad that I'm able to do it for all the guys from my gym and friends and family and all that.
And even so, just knowing that it was a local fighter fighting in the UFC's debut in Boston at that time, the crowd went absolutely wild. Even though Kenny Florian fought later that night, I thought you got the bigger crowd response.
I thought I got a pretty big pop. I don't know if it was bigger or less, whatever. I just know that I couldn't hear a thing. I had my corners 6 inches from my ear screaming. I couldn't hear a word. So it was awesome. It was definitely the biggest pop I've ever had.
Once again, we're chatting with Joe Lauzon, UFC lightweight contender who takes on Michael Johnson August 17th at the TD Garden in Boston. This is part of a UFC on Fox Sports card. Joe, you live in Bridgewater. We're based in Brockton. I have Comcast cable. Tell me if you're on the same page as me. My intake of UFC programming has significantly dropped since UFC moved away from Spike TV due to the fact that I don't have Fuel TV on my Comcast cable. Where can we get Fox Sports 1? It's a station that really hasn't started up just yet. Do you know anything about where this will be available for folks on television if they can't go live?
So I'm in the same boat as you. So I can't get Fuel because I have Comcast, and I really have no option to get Fuel. So the Fox deal has been great for the UFC because they have programming on Fox, they have programming on FX, and they have programming on Fuel. And I miss out on the Fuel stuff like anyone else that has Comcast. But I think that the new Fox Sports 1 thing is I think it's like Fox Speed or something like that, which I think everyone has that has Comcast, and I think it's a commonly distributed channel. It's just that there's not a lot of great programming on it, thus far. So I think that Fox Sports 1 isn't going yet. I think they're debuting it the weekend of the fight.
So more or less,
everyone that has Comcast should definitely have Fox Sports 1.
So more or less, it's the old Speed channel becoming Fox Sports 1, and we just have to find out where it is because I'm not much of a car guy, so I never watch Speed TV.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I'm not really, that's really not my thing so much. But I'm told that, everyone that has Comcast will be able to get it, which is awesome. Yeah, I think they're going to have, I think that's going to kind of be like their hub, so they'll still have occasional shows on Fox, the big Fox sometimes, but for the most part, everything will be on Fox Sports 1, which will be awesome.
Once again, we're chatting with Joe Lauzon, UFC contender here on AM 1460, the new WXBR, the Metro South Morning Show. Joe, what can you tell us about your opposition August 17th, Michael Johnson? What do you know about him? What strengths does he possess, and what dangers does he possess to you, and what weaknesses do you see that he has that you feel you can exploit to your own benefit?
Well, everyone at this level is super tough, super well-rounded. He's a southpaw, so he's a lefty. He's got great stand-up. Usually likes to fight on his feet a little bit more. He's got good wrestling. Jiu-jitsu isn't the best, so we kind of feel like we're gonna have the advantage there. So it'll be all about throwing some punches, getting the fight down, and going from there. But I'm confident. In the matchup, I really like the matchup. But he's tough. There's no pushover fights at all in the UFC ever. So it's gonna be a tough fight. I think I'm a slight favorite, but I'm not gonna sleep on it. I'm training like it's the toughest fight of my life, and just gonna get after it.
What does a win against Michael Johnson do for you at this point in your career? Because it seems like you've been on the verge of maybe receiving the title shot a few times during the course of your career, and every time something happens and goes wrong.
Yeah, it's been kind of tough. I feel like I've kind of broken into a couple top spots a couple times, and then I ended up dropping a tough fight. I lost my last fight to Jim Miller in December, but it was one of those fights where no one really lost. It was a great fight, back and forth. So I don't feel like I lost all that much, but fighting Michael Johnson will get me back in the win column. That's what it's all about. It's all about putting together streaks and putting together a run of a few fights, getting some wins, and this is a step in the right direction.
You mentioned
back in the win column.
You mentioned it's all about getting back in the win column and developing a winning streak. At the same time, you mentioned after technically losing your last fight via decision to Jim Miller, it wasn't really a loss for you because there were no losers. It was such an excellent fight. You, alongside now former UFC middleweight champion Anderson Silva, which still seems weird to say, you hold the record for most times winning fight bonuses for your performances in various bouts you've had in the UFC. What a fight bonus is, for those that don't know, is there are various payouts that fighters get based on their performance that night, whether it be knockout of the night, submission of the night, fight of the night, and other discretionary bonuses. There have been some fighters lately who have been cut from the UFC who have been very vocal in complaining about the UFC's pay structure and how they handle their fighters, yet someone like you seems to have made a very good living not only off your base pay for purses for your fight, but off your performance bonuses and whatnot. Do those guys have any legitimate gripes, or is it just sour grapes because they've been cut from the organization?
I think it's a little bit of both. You know what I mean? Like, we're paid fighters, so getting to the UFC doesn't mean that you're going to have this cushy job, where you're going to have to just, you're going to fight a couple times a year and you're going to, be rolling when you go to the bank. It doesn't work like that. You get paid based on how your performance goes. So I've been very fortunate where I've had some great fights and I've been rewarded with, bonuses and things like that. And I couldn't be happier with the pay structure, but then there's other guys that, maybe, their fights aren't quite as exciting, and they're not getting paid as much, but it all comes down to, people wanting to see you fight. There's other guys that have, that don't have the most exciting fights to have, you even call them somewhat boring fights, and they think that, I'm winning, so they should be paid a lot of money. And it doesn't work like that. It all comes down to, people tuning in, people wanting to, buy pay-per-views and things like that. And that's generally how the UFC makes money, so that's how they reward the fighters. I think that some people are confused thinking, you make it to the UFC, you're on easy street. It's not like that. You still have to fight every single time. You're only as good as your last fight, and you still got to get it done. And you can't just kind of rest in your laurels and be like, I'm in the UFC, pay me a lot of money. It doesn't quite work like that.
Once again, we're chatting with UFC lightweight contender Joe Lauzon here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. Joe, up until this point in your career, what has been the most difficult circumstance you've seen in the fight, against whom, and what was it all about?
For me personally, it's every single fight. It's every single fight. It's just dealing with injuries, and it's like, in like a video game, you're constantly, you're trying to like get better, you're trying to improve. But you don't have to deal with like these recurring nagging injuries, things like that. For me, it's I've had ACL surgery, I've had a lot of injuries, throughout my career, and and every here and there, they rear their head a little bit, or something gets sore, you jam a finger, or you sprain an ankle, or a hamstring's bothering you. There's always something that's there. And it's always like it's always a balancing act between, pushing really hard and training and getting in really great shape, and, not getting hurt. Like you hear all the time now about, all these different fighters are getting hurt. And it's not, the big thing is the fact that everyone's trying to push to that next higher level, and they're trying to get in better shape, and they're trying to get stronger, and they're trying to spar harder, and injuries occur. So for me, the ongoing thing is just staying healthy and, being in the best shape I can possibly be in while going into the fight as healthy as possible.
What's the worst injury you've had thus far, and what's the worst injury that you've had thus far that you still fought with?
The worst injury I had is when I fought Jeremy, I tore my ACL. So that was really crappy. I was out for I didn't fight for 10 or 11 months. So that was really, really bad. As far as what I threw, before I fought Melvin Gohart, I had a whole bunch of injuries. I rolled my ankle really bad. I pulled my groin really bad. I had a tooth knocked out. I got hurt and I couldn't train for a week. And then the first day back, I got hurt again, something else. And then a week later, I got hurt again. And it was the last 4 weeks, I didn't really train much at all because I couldn't. I kind of, just went in there and, luckily it all worked out. I dropped him with a punch, I choked him out. But there's been, it's sometimes it seems like the camps that I feel went the worst, the fights have gone the best. It's a lot of injuries accumulate, and then I go out there and the fight goes great. Other times, I train a little bit easier, I go in healthier, and the fight doesn't work out as well. So it's definitely a tough balancing act.
Once again, we're chatting with UFC lightweight contender Joe Lauzon here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. Joe, we're talking about some injuries you've had and some injuries which you fought with during the course of your career. Mixed martial arts still a relatively new sport in comparison to a lot of sports which get mainstream coverage, and as a result of it being so new, a lot of the long-term ramifications of what you guys do really have yet to be discovered. What nagging injuries have you continuously had, and do you foresee them at some point during the course of your life, perhaps after you've retired, sort of diminishing the quality of life in terms of moving around and whatnot? I have to imagine there's a lot of blown-out knees and a lot of blown-out elbows from watching these fights.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of nagging things. My left shoulder bothers me every once in a while. I'll throw a punch and I'll just land, just right, and it's not it definitely doesn't affect my quality of life, but it probably, it definitely affects my boxing a little bit. You know what I mean? I jammed a finger one time, and that's a nagging thing all the time where, I'll base out or I'll grab something or I'll just annoy that and I'll have to tape it for a couple of weeks. Nothing that's going to affect me real long term like that. But just things that are just annoying, things that I wish I didn't have to deal with.
Once again, we're chatting with Joe Lauzon here on AM 1460, the new WXBR, fighting at the TD Garden in Boston, August 17th, as a part of a UFC on Fox Sports card. Big main event, Shogun Rua taking on Chael Sonnen. We're getting more quality this time now that the UFC is coming back to Boston, as opposed to last time when we had a fight that was somewhat of the freak show variety between Randy Couture and James Toney. Why did it take the UFC so long to come back to Boston, considering that fighters such as yourself, Kenny Florian, Marcus Davis, John Doomsday Howard, and a plethora of other UFC staples throughout the years have come from Massachusetts and New England?
I think the big thing is, I think the UFC signs a lot of deals where they're supposed to go back to certain venues, just see them go back to the same venues over and over. And I think it's because, they sign contracts and they only have so many shows a year, so it's kind of tough. I feel like Boston was almost it was a bonus location where, they did a one-off deal. I think last time they came out, I think it was kind of bad timing. I think that, they would have been better off to come in, when all the kids, all the college kids were in school still and things like that. It was a little bit rough. Well, I think that I think that this time it's all about they're coming at the time they are because the launching of the Fox Sports Network, and I think there's a big Red Sox Yankee game that day too, and it's just a really good kind of kickstart kind of weekend.
Nice kickstart kind of weekend, but they're still going to miss the college kids being August 17th.
Yeah, no, I know, but I think that with the Red Sox game and all other stuff, and bringing such a stellar card, I think is really going to that'll bring everyone in.
It wouldn't surprise me if that's a Fox game as well, Red Sox Yankees on a Saturday afternoon, so it could all tie in.
I think it is.
Once again, we're chatting with Joe Lauzon here on AM 1460, the new WXBR UFC lightweight contender. Originally from East Bridgewater, you still reside in the area, Joe. Prior to becoming a mixed martial arts fighter, full-time professionally, what were you doing?
So I was a computer science kid. So I started training when I was a sophomore in high school, started doing jiu-jitsu and things like that. And then I went to Wentworth in Boston, and I was doing computer science. It was my major. And I was, basically doing classes, doing school, all that kind of fun stuff. And I was coming home to Bridgewater to train, And then just as time went on, I just kept everything going. And I was finishing up school, and I got to qualify in the UFC. And, but I had a full-time network admin job. And, and even after I was in the UFC, I had that job. And, a couple fights later, I decided, I didn't want to be the guy that was, doing it, with, one foot in the fighting game and one foot in the computer science game. I just wanted to jump in with both feet. And, and I've been really happy with how things have gone. It's awesome not having to go to work every day and just kind of, I'm definitely working every day, but it's different, going to the gym as opposed to going into like a 40-hour week, job sitting at my computer. So.
What was the moment for you where you realized you had a degree from Wentworth College that was not going to be needed for you and you could fight full time, which is probably something you never considered growing up?
It wasn't. It was like my last semester at school. I was doing like senior project and everything. Was when I was training for the Pulver fight. And then even after the Pulver fight, I didn't really get it, what had happened. Like I beat Pulver, I knocked him out. Like it didn't really hit me for like maybe a couple weeks after. And then I went on the Ultimate Fighter, and then I got to train. I almost got it was almost like a tease. I got to train twice a day, every single day, and and I could just see how much I improved. A great relationship started with BJ Penn. And like the real moment, like even after the show, I was still going to work and everything else. And then BJ on BJpenn.com, he used to do all kinds of video blogs like every day, and he started basically calling me like, Joe, like, get out here, come out to Hawaii, like we're waiting for you, get out here. And then that was what really did it for me. Like, you know what, I went and gave my 2 weeks notice, and then I headed to Hawaii.
Now, Jens Pulver you referenced. Jens Pulver was a former UFC lightweight champion who you had the duty of fighting in your UFC debut, no less. You were more or less expected to get killed by the former champion as just a young pup making his UFC debut. What was that experience like for you? What was your mindset going in? And how relieved were you when you knocked him out so quickly?
Well, training camp was miserable. Like, it was a great training camp, but it was definitely a grind. It was like, I remember, like, when we went out for the fight, I'm like, you know what, if this is what training camp has to be like for every single fight, I don't want to fight in the UFC. Like, I'm just going to go back to, working full time, and I don't care. But then the fight went so spectacularly. I knocked him out, first round, the whole thing. And, like, everyone that I talked to that week, it was like, oh, who you fight? Being friendly, I'm the new guy. And I'm like, oh, I'm fighting Pulver. And they just like, oh, they look at the ground and we're like, oh, okay, and they just kind of look away. So I was definitely the lamb being led to the slaughter a little bit. But we got it done. Made some fans, and everything went smooth. But initially it was looking really rocky.
Now, the UFC, like I mentioned, a relatively new organization, mixed martial arts, a relatively new sport. It's grown in leaps and bounds in a very quick period of time. What are some of the differences about the UFC that you've observed from your time first entering the organization not too long ago to present day 2013, where they're on national network television here and there with Fox? There's programming all over cable throughout the week. What particular changes have you seen in the UFC just in your time with the company?
The UFC has always treated me amazingly. They've always been great to me. It's always like, anything you need, let us know. Everything's always been good. I think the biggest thing is because the UFC has so many shows that they have people with so many specialized jobs. Like when I first fought in the UFC, there was like one guy that dealt with all the fighters. Made sure you got all your licensing done. Make sure you got all your medicals done. Made sure you did all the legal stuff with them. Did all your tax stuff. Did everything. It was like all the fighters had like this one point of contact, and they did everything. Now that those jobs are split up amongst like 4 different people because they have so many fighters coming in, they're so busy all the time. So that's a big thing. It's going to be really tough for any other show to compete with the UFC, just because it's such like a well-oiled machine. Because there's so many people that they do the exact same thing to every single show, and they're so good at their job. It's like it's tough when you have one person trying to do 4 or 5 of those things, which is what most of these other shows have to do, because they can't have a staff of a couple hundred people, just to deal with all the legal stuff and all the paperwork and all that other stuff. So, the UFC is just, they have it down. They're on point with everything. Like, everyone knows their job. Everyone knows exactly how to handle anything that comes their way. It's just everything runs very smoothly.
We're talking with Joe Lauzon here on AM 1460, the new WXPR. Joe, for this fight, you're training at your own gym, which, correct me if I'm wrong, formerly was held near the Bridgewater State University campus in Bridgewater, but you guys have since moved to Easton. Is that true?
Yes. So we used to be right across from Bridgewater State College, and now we're right on 123 in Easton on the industrial park across from Stonehill College. So we kind of traded out Bridgewater State for Stonehill.
And the new location treating you well. Folks can go down and train with you. Tell us how they can get involved with that.
Yep, so our website is LauzonMMA.com. We're at 9 Bristol Drive in Easton, right in the industrial complex. We always offer 30 days free. So anyone that's interested in trying out, everything is super beginner friendly because we all started as that beginner. It's not a case of you're going to walk in and you're going to get beat up on day one. It doesn't work like that. We'll get tons of great guys. I'm there. And my brother Dan is fighting UFC. He's there. Tom Lawler's around. He's fighting the UFC. Joe Proctor's in the UFC. We've had a lot of success, getting guys in the UFC, and we've done very, very well. But we also have a great beginner program and things like that. And all of our guys, are homegrown. We started, at day one with people and got them, to, incredibly skilled and got them to the next level. So, yeah, we have a great gym.
And Joe, when you and I were growing up, karate was a thing that kids did after school and whatnot. Now a lot of kids interested in mixed martial arts, and parents should know they can bring their kids down to your gym, sign them up for a class, and it's not going to be a situation like their kid's going to get their leg snapped the first class or anything. You guys are actually training these kids in a rather safe environment and teaching them all the fundamentals if they end up wanting to do this professionally or compete as an amateur one day.
Absolutely. We started our kids' class. We have kids like maybe 6 years old. So we start them there. And both of my, I have two kids instructors, and they're both teachers. One of them teaches like 6th grade science, and the other teaches like 7th grade math. And so they're great with kids. Like they're incredible with kids. Like I wouldn't do as good of a job as they do. And they've both been training just as long as I have. They're some of my best training partners. So they're super skilled, and they're great with dealing with kids, and they know exactly how to connect with kids, get kids to remember, and kind of make that connection. Kids are tough, you can't just be all super serious, and you got to get kids laughing and things like that, So it's definitely a great place, and we do the same thing, any parents interested, having their kids check out classes, we're right in Easton. We do 30 days free. It's definitely it's a great investment in your kids, keep them out of trouble, and give them some drive and motivation and things like that.
Is it difficult owning and operating a gym while training for your own fight at the very same time?
Yeah, it's a little bit tough trying to, wear both hats. Luckily I have great people to help out, so when I'm in camp, I have, other people to help out, so I have a partner, Joe Pomfret, and he was like my original trainer since day one, so he does a little bit more of the business side of things. We got, great staff to help out, just get everything to run really smooth, great instructors, everything works out really, really well. Like when I first started training it, the gym used to be called Reality Self-Defense. And when I started training, there was like 2 classes a night. Now we have like 4 or 5 classes every single day. So it'll fit anyone's schedule, and it's really, really nice. And I could never run that on my own. Like I would be so burned out trying to run 30 classes a week or something like that. But we got a great great instructors. They're super helpful, and good with beginners, good with advanced people, good with everyone. It takes a lot of the load off of me. So right now when I'm in a busy time because I'm fighting in a couple weeks. It doesn't stress me out, and I just get to, I get to focus on my stuff and just run a couple classes.
Well, that's Joe Lauzon joining us here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. I want to remind the folks that Joe Lauzon fights August 17th at the TD Garden in Boston. That fight will be broadcast on Fox Sports 1 if you do not get the opportunity to see Joe live. Joe, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. We hope to have you on again at some point.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You're listening to the Metro South Morning Show. We'll step aside for a quick break. Mike Pava joins us with a news update after this.